The stars belonged to they had owned them for 2,000 years. Every world that could support life, every species that had learned to think, every civilization that had reached for the sky, all of them served the great hegemony. Admiral stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the endless black of space. His body was tall and thin, made of living crystal that caught the light from distant stars. His people had no need for the crude flesh that covered other species. They were perfect beings, evolved beyond the weaknesses of meat and bone. The bridge around him hummed with quiet power. Screens showed star charts that covered half the galaxy. Red dots marked worlds under hegemony control. There were millions of them. Blue dots showed the few worlds that remained free, scattered like lost children in the dark. Each blue dot was a problem that needed fixing. His mind touched the thoughts of his crew without effort. Telepathy was as natural to his kind as breathing was to others. He felt their calm confidence, their absolute certainty that they served the rightful rulers of the galaxy. It had always been this way. It would always be this way. A soft chime drew his attention. Lieutenant Aura approached, her crystal body glowing with excitement. She carried a data tablet in her four-fingered hands. "Admiral, the deep space sensors have found something interesting," she said. Her voice was like wind chimes, musical and precise. "A new signal source in Sector 847. Turned his large, faceted eyes toward her. Each eye could see light patterns that organic beings could never imagine. "Explain." "Radio waves, sir. Primitive but organized. The patterns suggest intelligence." She handed him the tablet. "The source is a small yellow star, third planet. The signals are very basic, simple audio and visual transmissions." The Admiral studied the data. The signals were laughably simple. Crude television broadcasts, ancient radio frequencies, the kind of communications that species used when they first discovered electromagnetic radiation. He had seen this pattern thousands of times before. "How primitive are they?" he asked. "Very primitive, sir. Our computers estimate they achieved basic only recently. They have a few small satellites, some basic probes. They barely qualify as a spacefaring species." Nodded, this was routine work. Every few years, the hegemony discovered a new species taking its first steps into the void. The protocol was always the same. Study them, evaluate their usefulness, absorb them into the empire. "What do they call themselves?" he asked. Aura consulted her tablet. "The species designation appears to be human. They inhabit a world they call Earth. Initial scans show they are divided into many separate nations. They appear to be in constant conflict with each other." The Admiral's crystalline face showed something that might have been amusement. "Of course they are. Primitive species always fight among themselves. They lack the wisdom to see the larger picture." He walked to the main viewing screen and activated it. The image showed a blue and green world orbiting an unremarkable star. It looked peaceful from this distance, but knew better. His sensors could detect the electromagnetic signatures of weapons, the heat blooms of explosions, the scattered debris of conflicts across the planet's surface. "They are killing each other while we watch," he observed. "How many nations do they have?" "Approximately 200, sir. Some large, some very small. They have never achieved global unity." Felt a familiar contempt. This was always how it was with young species. They spent their energy fighting each other instead of working together. They built weapons instead of wisdom. They chose conflict over cooperation. It was exactly why species like them needed guidance from their betters. "Biological classification?" he asked. "Carbon-based, sir. Bipedal mammalian, short, approximately 80 local years. No psychic abilities detected. Brain structure suggests moderate intelligence, but limited by emotional responses and chemical drives." No psychic abilities. That was good. Species with mental powers could sometimes resist hegemony conditioning, at least initially. These humans would be easy to manage. A few demonstrations of power would show them the futility of resistance. Then they would gratefully accept their place in the galactic order. "What is their technological level?" Wanted to know everything before making his report to High Command. "Fusion power in early stages, basic computers, chemical rockets for space travel, nuclear weapons but crude ones. They have just discovered quantum mechanics but barely understand it." Aura paused. "Sir, they are at least 1,500 years behind our current technology, possibly more." The Admiral considered this. 1,500 years was nothing to His own species lived for thousands of years, and their civilization had existed for tens of thousands. Time moved differently when you could see beyond the brief flicker of a single organic lifetime. Population, he asked. Approximately 8 billion individuals. High reproductive rate. They could provide substantial labor if properly managed. Labor, that was the key word. The hegemony always needed workers. Mining operations, construction projects, basic manufacturing. There were always tasks that required large numbers of hands, even in an automated galaxy. Humans seemed perfect for this role. Numerous enough to be useful, primitive enough to be grateful for the technology they would be given. Prepare a reconnaissance fleet, ordered. Standard first contact protocols. I want detailed scans of their military capabilities, population centers, and resource distributions. Yes, sir, how large a fleet? Thought for a moment. Standard practice was to bring overwhelming force to first contact. It prevented misunderstandings and demonstrated the futility of resistance. But these humans were so primitive that a large fleet might be wasteful. 12 ships should be sufficient, he decided. Include the crystal spear and the void hammer. Their weapons alone could sterilize the entire planet if necessary. And if the humans resist, sir? The Admiral's expression showed no doubt. They will not resist for long. Look at them. They cannot even stop fighting each other. How could they possibly stand against the hegemony? He turned back to the viewing screen, watching the small blue world that would soon join the vast collection of property. Another primitive species would learn the benefits of civilized rule. Their brief period of independence was ending, though they did not know it yet. Set course for Earth, he commanded. It is time to welcome humanity to the galaxy. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 12 massive ships materialized from the void, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of the sun. Each ship was larger than any building the humans had ever constructed. The smallest vessel in Admiral's fleet could have housed 1 million people. On Earth, every telescope turned skyward. Every radio dish strained to catch signals from the visitors. Within hours, the governments of the world knew they were not alone in the universe. Admiral allowed the humans time to see his fleet. Fear was an important part of first contact. Let them understand how small they were, how hopeless resistance would be. He watched the electromagnetic chatter from the planet increase dramatically. The humans were talking to each other at incredible speed, their communication networks burning with activity. Sir, Lieutenant Aura reported, they have detected us. Their military forces are mobilizing. Examine the sensor readings. Every nation on the planet was moving ships, aircraft, and troops. It was the natural response of a primitive species. They would threaten and bluster before accepting reality. Move the fleet into Earth orbit, he ordered. Begin the standard demonstration. The 12 ships moved inward, past the humans' small space stations and primitive satellites. The crystal spear took position directly above the largest human city. The void hammer positioned itself over another major population center. The remaining ships spread across the planet, each one hanging in the sky like a crystal mountain. On the planet below, millions of humans looked up and saw their new masters. Activated the communication system. His voice would be broadcast on every radio frequency, every television channel, every computer network on the planet. The ship's computers had already learned every human language from their intercepted transmissions. People of Earth, his voice rang across the planet in hundreds of languages simultaneously. I am Admiral of the Hegemony. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our empire. This is not a negotiation. This is an announcement. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Across the planet, human leaders would be gathering in emergency meetings. Their military commanders would be calculating impossible odds. Their people would be looking to the sky in fear. You have 3 choices, continued. First, you may surrender immediately and accept integration into the hegemony. Your species will be relocated to suitable worlds where you will serve useful functions in our society. Second, you may resist, in which case we will demonstrate the futility of opposition before offering you the first option again. Third, you may choose complete defiance, in which case your species will be eliminated and your world will be given to others who understand wisdom. The communication ended. Now came the waiting. In its experience, primitive species needed time to process the reality of their situation. Some surrendered immediately, others required demonstration. A very few chose extinction. He predicted these humans would need demonstration. The response came 3 hours later. It was not what he expected. Every major human leader spoke at the same time, from every nation in every language. But they all said the same words. "We reject your terms. Humanity chooses freedom." Stared at the communication display. This was unprecedented. The humans had not even tried to negotiate. They had not offered tribute or begged for mercy. Most surprising of all, they had answered as one voice. Species that could not achieve global unity had somehow agreed on this response in mere hours. "Sir," Aura said, her voice uncertain, "their military forces are not standing down. In fact, they appear to be coordinating their efforts." The Admiral studied the tactical displays. She was right. The humans' separate military forces were sharing information, combining their resources, working together with an efficiency that seemed impossible for such a fractured species. Nations that had been enemies that morning were now planning joint operations. "Show them the price of defiance," he ordered. "Target the military installation designated as Pentagon, minimum power. We want to damage, not destroy." The crystal spear charged its primary weapon. Energy that could split continents focused into a precise beam. The weapon fired. The beam struck the Pentagon and stopped. A shimmering barrier appeared around the building, absorbing the energy that should have vaporized it. The building stood intact. "Impossible," whispered. His sensors showed the energy had been completely neutralized. But the humans had no shield technology. Their most advanced defenses were primitive missiles and electronic countermeasures. "Sir, they somehow adapted our energy signature," the weapons officer reported. "Their shield frequency is perfectly matched to our weapons." "How?" demanded. "They barely understand quantum mechanics. They should not be able to analyze our technology in minutes." "Unknown, sir, but it gets worse. They are broadcasting the shield frequency to all their military installations. They are all adapting the same defenses." Across the planet, human military bases began activating shields that should not exist. Technology that required centuries of advancement was being deployed by a species that had discovered electricity only 100 years ago. Felt something he had not experienced in 500 years of service: uncertainty. "Target their capital cities," he ordered. "Higher power settings." 3 ships opened fire simultaneously. Washington, London, and Moscow should have been erased from the planet's surface. Instead, the shield barriers flared brighter and held. Not only held, but somehow grew stronger with each impact. "Sir," the communications officer spoke carefully, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet." "Display it." A human face appeared on the screen. The being was small, covered in flesh, with 2 eyes and a mouth full of white calcium structures. By standards, it was hideous. But there was something in those small eyes that made uncomfortable. "I am Secretary General of the United Nations," the human said. "Thank you for the demonstration. Our scientists find your technology fascinating. We have some questions about the quantum matrices in your energy weapons. Would you be interested in an exchange of information?" The transmission ended. Stared at the empty screen. Questions about quantum matrices. These beings had just survived an attack that should have ended their civilization, and they wanted to discuss the technical aspects. "Sir," Aura said quietly, "our intelligence was wrong. These humans are not primitive. They are something else entirely." The Admiral looked at the planet below, where 8 billion beings had just the greatest military power in the galaxy, and asked for homework assignments. For the first time in his long life, he wondered if the hegemony had made a mistake. "Continue the attack," he ordered, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. "Full power on all targets." The fleet opened fire with enough energy to crack a moon. The shields around human installations blazed like new stars, but they held. And somehow, impossibly, they were getting stronger. Admiral realized he might need reinforcements. Admiral had called for reinforcements. He had also called for his science team to explain what should not be possible. 3 ships now surrounded the lead human vessel that had somehow appeared in space despite having no advanced propulsion systems just days before. "Explain to me," said to his chief scientist, Dr. N, "how a species that uses chemical rockets is now flying ships that match our acceleration curves." Dr. N's crystalline form flickered with nervous energy. She had been studying the captured human technology for hours, and her findings disturbed her deeply. Sir, they should not be able to do any of this. Their basic science is centuries behind ours, but they are not following normal learning patterns. What do you mean? When most species encounter advanced technology, they study it slowly. They need time to understand the principles, to develop new materials, to train their people. It takes decades, sometimes centuries. She gestured to a display showing human ships. These beings did it in days. Examine the tactical display. Human vessels that had not existed a week ago were now performing maneuvers that should tear apart their pilots. Their ships pulled turns that created gravitational forces no organic being could survive. Their pilots should be dead, he observed. That is what I thought too, but our sensors show the humans inside are not just alive, they are functioning at peak efficiency. Their reaction times are getting faster. Their coordination is improving. Sir, they are adapting in real time. The communications officer interrupted. Admiral, the human fleet is hailing us. On screen, the same human face from before appeared. Secretary General looked calm, almost friendly. She sat in what appeared to be a command chair, surrounded by displays that showed ship positions with impossible accuracy. Admiral said, "We have finished analyzing the ships you lost yesterday. Very impressive engineering. We have some improvements to suggest." Ships they had lost, checked his fleet status. All 12 ships were still functional, still in formation. "We have lost no ships, human." Smiled, it was an expression that showed her white calcium structures. "Not yet, but you will. In approximately 14 minutes, the gravitational resonance from your engines will create a cascade failure in your power systems. We calculated it while studying the wreckage." "What wreckage?" demanded. "The wreckage from the ships you are about to lose," replied. "We have been running probability calculations. Would you like us to send you the math?" The transmission ended, turned to his engineering team. "Is there any possibility of gravitational resonance in our engines?" The chief engineer consulted his displays. "Sir, there is a theoretical possibility, but it would require precise timing and specific conditions. The chances are less than 1 in 10 million. "Check it anyway." For the next 14 minutes, watched his chronometer and his engine readings. At exactly the time the human had predicted, warnings began flashing across every display on his ship. Gravitational resonance was building in the engine core. "Emergency shutdown," the engineer shouted. "All ships, emergency engine shutdown." Too late, the crystal spear shuddered as its engine core began tearing itself apart. 2 other ships reported similar failures. In the space of 30 seconds, 3 of his most powerful vessels went dead in space, their crews scrambling to prevent total destruction. Hal whispered, "How did they know?" Dr. N's voice was barely audible. "Sir, I think I know what they are. The humans do not have psychic abilities like us, but their minds generate something else. A form of quantum noise that our instruments detect as random energy. Random energy cannot predict engine failures." "That is what I thought. But what if it is not random? What if their minds are processing quantum probability streams at a subconscious level? They would not know they are doing it, but they would sense patterns, predict outcomes, see possibilities before they happen." Felt ice in his crystalline heart. "Are you suggesting they can see the future?" "Not exactly, but they can calculate probability matrices that our most advanced computers cannot handle. And sir, there is something else. The quantum noise in their minds appears to interfere with our control systems." As if to prove her point, the displays around the bridge began flickering. Communications equipment sparked and failed. The telepathic link that connected all crew members grew weak and fragmented. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "human ships are moving into attack formation. All functional vessels recommend we withdraw to safe distance." Withdraw could not believe the words. A fleet had never withdrawn from a primitive species, ever. "Sir, look at their ships." Turned to the main display. The human vessels were no longer the crude metal boxes they had been days before. Somehow, impossibly, they had been rebuilt. They now showed design elements that could only have come from studying technology, but they were not copies, they were improvements. "They have weapons signatures we do not recognize," the weapons officer reported. "Energy patterns that match our own technology, but modified in ways our computers cannot analyze." How long did you say they have had our technology? Asked. 3 days, sir. They captured some debris from our first engagement. 3 days? In 3 days, they had not only understood technology that had taken the centuries to develop, they had made it better. Admiral, Dr. N said quietly, I have been studying their history. These beings have been at war with each other for thousands of years. They have been selecting for intelligence, aggression, adaptability. They are not just another species. They are weapons that learn to think. The human fleet opened fire, but these were not the crude missiles and energy beams that the humans had used before. These were weapons that should not exist, that used principles that had considered theoretical impossibilities. Remaining ships began dying. Emergency retreat, he ordered. All ships jump to hyperspace immediately. Sir, hyperspace systems are not responding. The quantum noise from the human minds is interfering with our navigation computers. Stared at the tactical display as human ships surrounded his fleet. They were not just winning, they were hunting. The greatest military force in the galaxy was being stalked by a species that had discovered fire only a few thousand years ago. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered. Secretary General appeared on the screen again. She was still smiling. Admiral, she said, we have been waiting for you to call. We have a proposition for you. Surrender your ships and we will guarantee the safety of your crews. Refuse, and we will be forced to continue our experiments with your technology. Your choice. Experiments? They were not even fighting a war. To them, this was a learning exercise. For the first time in 2,000 years of galactic dominance, an admiral prepared to surrender his fleet to an enemy. And as he did, he realized that everything the hegemony thought it knew about the universe was about to change. Emperor and had ruled the galaxy for 600 years. In all that time, no species had ever defeated a fleet. The message from Admiral was impossible to believe. Read it again, the Emperor commanded. General Ash, commander of the Imperial Guard, consulted the communication tablet with obvious discomfort. Your Imperial Majesty, Admiral reports that his fleet has been captured. The human species has somehow developed advanced technology and taken his ships intact. His crews are being held as prisoners, but they are not being harmed. Captured, Emperor N's crystalline form blazed with angry light. 12 ships of the line, captured by primitives who use chemical rockets. Sir, there is more. Admiral claims the humans have developed weapons that interfere with our biological matrix. Several crew members have reported system failures in their crystalline structure. The Emperor stood from his throne, his towering form casting sharp shadows across the grand chamber. For 6 centuries, he had maintained order through absolute strength. Every species in the galaxy knew that defying the hegemony meant extinction. If word spread that humans had captured a fleet, every enslaved world would dream of rebellion. Prepare the war fleet, he ordered. I will lead it personally. Your Majesty, perhaps a smaller force would be sufficient. No, the Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber. I will bring 1,000 ships. I will bring the Star Destroyer and the galaxy's edge. I will bring enough firepower to crack their world in half. And when I am done, I will scatter their atoms across the void as a lesson to any who think they can defy us. General Ash bowed. It shall be done, Your Majesty. 3 months later, the largest war fleet in galactic history dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 1,000 ships, each one capable of destroying a planet. The Emperor's flagship, Imperial Dominance, was larger than some moons. Emperor N stood on his bridge, studying the tactical displays. He expected to see a primitive star system with a few small worlds and maybe some basic defense satellites. What he saw instead made him question his sensors. The entire solar system had been turned into a fortress. The asteroid belt had been reorganized into defensive positions. Massive weapon platforms floated in perfect formations around every planet. The space between worlds buzzed with ships that classification. They looked like no technology he had ever seen, yet his computers identified energy signatures that could only come from advanced systems. How long did you say they have had our technology? He asked. 3 months, Your Majesty, since Admiral's fleet was captured. 3 months? The Emperor had taken centuries to build the defenses around his capital world. These humans had fortified an entire star system in a single season. Sir, the sensor operator reported, we are being scanned. The humans know we are here. Of course they know. Begin the attack. Target the third planet. I want it reduced to rubble. The Imperial War fleet opened fire with the combined power of 1,000 suns. Energy beams that could melt continents lanced across space toward Earth. The Emperor watched with satisfaction as the attack closed the distance to their target. The beams struck Earth's defensive grid and simply vanished. Not reflected, not absorbed, vanished, as if they had never existed at all. Impossible, the Emperor whispered. What kind of shields could do that? Sir, the weapons officer said, his voice shaking, our energy is not being blocked. It is being redirected. Somehow they are sending our own weapons through dimensional space. Dimensional space? That is theoretical technology. It cannot be built. Your Majesty, the humans are broadcasting a message. Show me. A human face appeared on the screen. It was not Secretary General this time, but an older human male with gray hair and calm eyes. I am Admiral, the human said. Secretary General is my daughter. Thank you for the demonstration, Emperor N. Our scientists were curious about the maximum output of your fleet weapons. You have been very helpful. The Emperor felt rage building in his crystal matrix. You dare to mock us. We have come to end your pathetic species. Admiral smiled. Actually, we have come to end yours. You have been ruling the galaxy through fear for 2,000 years. That stops today. The transmission ended. Before the Emperor could respond, every screen on his bridge began flashing warnings. Human ships were appearing throughout his fleet, not approaching from a distance, but materializing directly between his vessels. Ships that had not existed moments before were suddenly there, as if they had stepped out of another dimension. How are they doing this? The Emperor demanded. Sir, they appear to have developed dimensional jumping technology. They are moving through folded space. We have been working on dimensional jumping for 500 years. It cannot be done. Your Majesty, the humans are not limited by what cannot be done. The human ships opened fire, but these were not weapons that destroyed through force or energy. These were weapons that attacked the quantum foundation of matter itself. Where they struck ships, the crystalline hulls simply stopped existing, leaving perfect spherical holes in space. What are those weapons? The Emperor shouted. Sir, they appear to use the same quantum noise that we detected in human minds. They have somehow weaponized their own thought patterns. Around the bridge, crew members began showing signs of distress. Their crystalline bodies flickered and dimmed. Some fell to the deck, their life energy disrupted by the same quantum noise that powered the human weapons. Your Majesty, the ship's doctor called out, the quantum interference is causing cascade failures in our biological systems. We need to withdraw immediately. No retreat, the Emperor commanded. All ships ramming speed. If we cannot destroy them with weapons, we will crush them with our hulls. But his ships were already dying. The quantum weapons did not just destroy matter, they disrupted the energy patterns that held consciousness together. Across his fleet, vessels began drifting dead in space as their crews simply stopped functioning. Admiral's face appeared on the screen again. Emperor, and this is your final warning. Order your remaining ships to stand down, or we will demonstrate why our species survived when every other predator on our world went extinct. Never, the Emperor roared. The hegemony does not surrender. Very well, Admiral said sadly. Computer, activate the neural cascade. Every human ship in the system began broadcasting a specific pattern of quantum noise. It spread through space at the speed of light, washing over the fleet like an invisible tide. Where it touched, minds simply shut down. Not killed, not destroyed, but overwhelmed by patterns their brains could not process. In the space of minutes, the greatest war fleet in galactic history became a collection of ghost ships drifting silently through the void. Emperor N felt his own consciousness fading as the quantum storm overwhelmed his mind. His last thought before darkness took him was a terrible realization. The humans had not been awakened by first contact. They had been awakened by the hunt. For the first time in their history, they had found prey worthy of their abilities. The galaxy's apex predators were no longer sleeping. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, human ships appeared in the skies above every major world in the hegemony. Not to attack, not to conquer, but to deliver a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Liberation, humanity's new flagship, watching the blue-green world of Zephyr Prime turning slowly below. This was the capital of an empire that had ruled for 2,000 years. In a few hours, it would be just another free world among thousands. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "all human fleets are in position. We have ships at every core world, every major colony, every administrative center in hegemony space. And our broadcast equipment. Ready, ma'am? The quantum transmitters will reach every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously." Nodded, it had taken 6 months to prepare for this moment. 6 months of studying captured technology, of learning the structure of their empire, of preparing for the greatest liberation in galactic history. The hardest part had not been the technology or the logistics. It had been convincing her own people not to become the very thing they were fighting against. "Begin transmission," she ordered. Across the galaxy, on millions of worlds, the same message began broadcasting in every known language. It appeared on command screens, on colonial communication networks, on primitive radio receivers belonging to species that had barely achieved spaceflight. Everywhere, beings looked up to see human faces speaking words they had not heard in centuries. "People of the galaxy," began, "this is Admiral of the Terran Cooperative. Today marks the end of the hegemony's rule. You are free." On Zephyr Prime, Emperor watched the broadcast from his quarters aboard the human ship. He was not in chains or a prison cell. The humans had given him comfortable rooms, access to books, even a view of the stars. It was more dignity than he had shown most of his prisoners over the centuries. "You are free," continued, "to make your own choices, to govern yourselves, to reach for the stars or tend your gardens as you see fit. The age of forced unity is over. The age of chosen cooperation begins now." Across the galaxy, something unprecedented began happening. The neural conditioning that had kept billions of beings docile and obedient began failing. The quantum noise generated by human minds, broadcast through their communication networks, disrupted the psychic control systems that had maintained order for. On a mining world in the Outer Rim, a worker looked at his overseer and realized for the first time in his life that he did not have to obey. On Altair 7, a scientist understood that she could study whatever interested her, not just what the hegemony commanded. On Nu, a colony of former humans remembered that they had once had names and dreams beyond their assigned functions. The revolution was not violent. It was simply the sudden understanding that choice existed. "The Terran Cooperative offers alliance to any world that wishes it," his message continued. "We offer technology, trade, protection from those who would enslave you again, but we do not demand it. Freedom includes the right to stand alone." Emperor turned off the display and walked to the window of his quarters. Below, his home world was changing. Civilians were gathering in the crystal cities, not to riot or rebel, but to talk, to discuss, to decide for themselves what they wanted their world to become. A soft chime indicated a visitor. The door opened to admit Admiral herself. She entered without guards, without weapons, trusting that a deposed emperor would not harm her. It was a level of confidence that spoke of absolute power held with absolute restraint. "Your Imperial Majesty," she said, offering a slight bow, "I hope you are comfortable." "Comfortable?" An's crystalline form flickered with bitter amusement. "I am the prisoner of a species I tried to exterminate. My empire has collapsed. My people are abandoning everything they once believed. How could I be comfortable?" Walked to the window and looked out at the planet below. "Your people are not abandoning their beliefs. They are choosing them for the first time. There is a difference." "You could have killed me," the Emperor said. "You could have executed me in front of my people, made me a martyr or an example. Why did you not?" "Because that would make us like you," replied simply. "We did not fight the hegemony to become the hegemony." "Then what did you fight for?" Was quiet for a long moment, watching ships from a dozen different species arriving in orbit around Zephyr Prime. They came not as conquerors, but as equals. "We fought so that every being in the galaxy could have what you never gave them," she said finally. "A choice. And what if they choose poorly? What if some worlds descend into chaos? What if species make war on each other? Then they will learn from their mistakes or they will not, but they will do it as free beings making free choices. That is worth any risk." The Emperor stared at this small, fragile creature who had brought down his eternal empire. "Your species is strange. You could rule the galaxy. Your technology is superior to ours, your weapons more advanced, your strategies more effective. You could force peace, ensure order, prevent suffering. We could, agreed. But we learned something long ago that your people never discovered. True strength is not the ability to force others to obey you. True strength is the ability to inspire others to stand beside you. And if that fails, if beings choose conflict over cooperation, smiled, then we will be here to remind them that there are better ways. We will offer alliance to those who want it, protection to those who need it, and opposition to those who would take freedom from others. But we will never again allow one species to claim dominion over the stars. Through the window, they could see other human ships arriving in the system. Not warships now, but transport vessels carrying teachers, engineers, doctors, scientists, humans who had volunteered to help other species learn to be free. "What happens to me now?" An asked. "That is your choice," said. "You can return to your people and help them adjust to freedom. You can travel the galaxy and see what it becomes when every world chooses its own path. You can even work with us to ensure that freedom survives." She paused. "Or you can retire to a quiet world and tend a garden. The choice is yours." Choice, for a being who had made choices for billions of others for 600 years. The concept was terrifying and liberating at the same time. After left, Emperor stood at his window watching the galaxy transform. Ships from thousands of worlds moved freely through space that had once been restricted to hegemony vessels. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries were beginning tentative communications. Former slaves were becoming explorers, soldiers were becoming artists, subjects were becoming citizens. The humans had kept their promise. They had brought freedom to the galaxy, but more than that, they had brought something and was only beginning to understand. They had brought hope. Far below, in the crystal cities of Zephyr Prime, his former subjects were learning to dream their own dreams. And for the first time in his long life, the former emperor of the galaxy began to wonder what he might choose to become. The age of empire was over. The age of choice had begun. And across the vast expanse of stars, billions of beings were free to reach for their own destinies, knowing that somewhere among the stars, the children of Earth stood ready to ensure that freedom would never again be taken from them. The coming of the Terrans had not brought conquest, it had brought liberation. And the galaxy would never be the same.